Welcome to Senior Solutions. I'm your host, Karen Halloran with Azor Healthcare, and today we have on the show Shannon McArthur from Waring-Sullivan Funeral Home. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Karen, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, this is an interesting subject for today. Why don't you just tell us, how did you become a funeral director?
So I started my career in Rhode Island. I went to Bayview High School, and we did like a school to career instead of a senior capstone project. So I went to a funeral home every Wednesday for about 8 weeks in the springtime, and I liked the industry, so I ended up applying to a college that had funeral service, and I went into the funeral service program, as well as once I did that, I did my apprenticeship in Rhode Island, my funeral director and embalmer license in Rhode Island, and then came to Massachusetts and got my license here.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
It is, but it was all worth it.
I don't think there's too many women in the industry.
Believe it or not, more and more are. At our Waring-Sullivan home in Fall River, we actually, the majority of us are women.
Wow, that's good. We're rising up in that
changed.
field. It's changing.
It is. It's continuously changing.
So a couple of things are at-need and pre-need services. Can you tell us the meaning and the difference between those two?
Yes, so I'm a licensed funeral director, but with Waring-Sullivan, I specialize in pre-planning. So that's setting up arrangements ahead of time to take the burden financially and emotionally off your family. So it's just basically taking care of the arrangements. We ask over 120 questions alone just for statistical information we need for death certificates, permits, so we take care of that. If you decide not to pre-plan, or even if you do pre-plan, at the time my colleagues will take care of the arrangements, which is called at-need. So at the time of a passing, that's where my colleagues will meet with your family again. If you have a pre-need, review what you have. If you don't have a pre-need, you're starting from scratch. So it makes it a little bit more difficult because there's some questions you may not know the answer to, and you have to go back to your family's home, run around, try to find paperwork. So, but they take care of the services at the time, embalming, preparation, and all the legal paperwork.
Well, that's great. I think it saves a lot of hassle and everything. It's such an emotional time.
It does.
So if those arrangements can be made ahead of time, that's great.
It definitely is.
Now, what happens if there's not a pre-need in place?
So if there's not a pre-need in place, what happens is you're going to start from scratch. So at the time, once your loved one or friend passes away, we would get the phone call, we would transport them into our care, and we would meet with the family the day of or the next day, and we're taking and answering all the statistical questions. So their social security number, where they were born, where their parents were born, where their parents, their names, their maiden names. So a ton of statistical data that we need that people don't realize, besides also the information that we take for the obituary. So it's just, you're kind of already through a stressful situation, and instead of it being a review, you're starting everything from the beginning. You have to find all the information because we have to, a lot of times, get permits, death certificates before we can do transportation or do certain burial or cremation services.
That's a lot to get accomplished in a short period of time, because usually the services are like 3 days later, so that's a time crunch for you.
It is. So it's always, you know, if you know someone is going to pass away, even if they haven't prearranged right away, they're on hospice care, you know that they're going to pass, still give the funeral home a call that you're looking to go to, because we can still help get information done ahead of time. I've met with families at their house when they're on hospice care, just to make the difficult situation a little bit easier. So then again, it's really just a review at the time. You're picking days, you're picking times, but everything's done. So it just makes a difficult time at least that much easier.
So what are the benefits to a pre-need contract?
So with Waring-Sullivan, we're part of the Dignity Memorial Network. We lock in our costs. So that, you know, a lot of times funeral arrangements, most of the time they go up once or twice every year. In 10 years, it may double. What you're doing is locking in the funeral home costs, so you could live another 25, 30 years, but whatever you paid today is what we lock in and guarantee.
I'm sure a lot of people don't like to think of end of life, but that is a great thing to do.
It is, and you know, it's one of those things no one wants to talk about, but ultimately you have to. We're all going to go through it, you know, the old statement, death and taxes, we all have to experience it. We just hope it's not until, you know, we're in our 90s, 100, as long as we feel okay. So it's easier just to make that situation that we know is going to happen, prepare as much as you can. I always say it's basically, to me, it goes hand in hand with estate planning, setting up your wills, your power of attorneys, and to me, also setting up your funeral arrangements.
Sounds like a smart idea.
It is.
So if someone's interested in doing this, how do they start the process?
So to start the process, you'd call the funeral home directly. The most difficult thing to do, in my opinion, is make the appointment. I always say it's like pulling off a Band-Aid. Once you make the appointment, we're not so scary.
Right.
So we're a normal person too. But we want to just make sure that once, we can meet at the house, we can meet at the funeral home. I've had families, I met at nursing homes, I've met at Dunkin' Donuts. So we understand not everyone wants to walk into a funeral home, but it does make it easier, and we're able to adjust wherever you'd like to meet to take care of your arrangements, so it's the weight taken off of your shoulders.
That's great. Mm-hmm. What are some basic questions somebody would ask?
So when you meet with the funeral home, usually a lot of times we'll ask, what are you looking for? Are you looking for cremation? Are you looking for burial? If you are going to be burial or cremated, what cemetery were you looking to be buried in? Are you a veteran? Because there are certain veterans burial benefits, statistical information, as I said earlier. So we're looking for a lot of information, prices, break down the prices of what's included. You have your funeral home and your non-funeral home fees. So we're here to answer your question. Not everyone has, I like to say, a funeral home or funeral director friend. So we're the funeral director friend. We can answer your questions. A lot of my colleagues, as well as myself, were licensed in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So we're familiar with both state laws, especially when, we're in Fall River, you could go over the line, vice versa. Rhode Island, if you're in Tiverton, you could go over the line back to Fall River. So we help organize all of that, and we help answer all of your questions. Nothing is too strange. We know it's, a taboo topic, so
Right.
nothing is too strange. Don't be scared to ask any question.
That's great. Now, is there an obligation or payment to meet the PNFD in advance, which
No.
I don't know what the PNFD is.
So it's basically a pre-need funeral director. So
Okay.
there's no obligation to do that. So again, it's really where your person to answer your questions. We have options, so we can break down the pricing for you to see what you'd like to do, go over payment options. We can take care of all of that. But there's no obligation to pay. It's just a meeting like anything else. We go over it, answer all your questions. If you'd like to do payment, we go over that. If not, that's okay too.
So if they do choose to pay, what are the payment options?
So we offer a 3- and 5-year payment plan. Each funeral home may have different payment plan options. All of our Dignity funeral homes have 3- and 5-year. Some include insurance protection, which is if you pass away before your services are paid off, as long as you answered the health questions, then what's going to do is going to cover the balance. The other is basically a 3- or 5-year. There's no extra protection fees. If you pass away before it's paid off, your family would owe the difference. Both still lock in the cost. We understand not everyone's going to be able to come up with a couple $1,000s and sometimes more than that. So we try to make it so it's still a good decision because you're still getting it paid in 3 and 5 years, but it still makes it more flexible with your finances.
That's great. People can break it up.
Exactly.
Sometimes they don't have that big chunk of money to put down.
Right.
Now, what are the qualifications to discuss the PN?
So again, the qualifications in regards to the funeral director. So in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, we have to be a licensed funeral director anytime we're doing the pre-need arrangements, the contract. So we do have to be a licensed funeral director. So you would be meeting with a licensed funeral director. We also, again, when we're meeting with your family, we take down all the statistical information, go over the pricing. Legally, when you prepay, no funeral home can hold on to the funds in their own account, and that's for the family's protection. So what happens is the money is held with a third-party company. Some funeral homes use a trust, some use an insurance company. They both serve the same purpose, and they both would basically have the contract that was itemized out, and they're just holding on to the funds.
So another question, what is Dignity Memorial Network?
So Dignity Memorial, basically we have over 2,000 funeral homes, crematories, and cemeteries all over the United States, in Canada as well. And what happens is it makes it easier. So if we have snowbirds, let's say, and they set up arrangements with us in Massachusetts or Rhode Island at one of our Dignity homes, if they they spend maybe 4 months out of the year in Florida, let's say, and they pass away there and they want to be cremated there. It makes it easier because we just find another Dignity affiliate, and they honor the pricing, they honor all of the services. We share the same computer system, we share the same paperwork, so we can just fax it. The same company holds on to the funds, so it just makes it an easier transition. And then if there's any additional fees, let's say that person passed away in Florida and they wanted to be flown back to Rhode Island or Massachusetts for a burial, it just makes the transition a little bit easier because it's, again, Dignity memorial fees. We share the same contract, same information, so it just makes it easier. So when people say to me, well, Shannon, what happens if I'm away and I pass away somewhere in the country? That's okay. We would just call and find another local Dignity affiliate, and where I always say we're covered on both coasts, because both coasts, most New Englanders want to stay near the water. So we're always covered and can transfer the arrangements.
That's great, especially for people out of state.
Right.
Now, who is part of this network locally?
So locally, we have the Waring-Sullivan Funeral Home. So I work in Swansea, Fall River, and Somerset. And then we also have Rock Funeral Home, Waring-Sullivan in Dartmouth. And then we also have a bunch of homes on the Cape. And then I also work at Pontarelli Marino Funeral Home in Providence, as well as my colleagues also work in other locations in Providence.
Boy, you're busy.
I am.
I didn't realize you had so many locations.
I am.
So I think you touched upon it, what happens when you pass out of the state or the country. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
There is. So there's something that we offer called travel protection or away from home protection. So what it is, it's basically a policy where, let's say you're traveling and you pass away out of the country. You pass away even in the country, whether you're full burial or cremation, but you know your family would want to view you before you're cremated. It's a plan you can purchase with any Dignity home, and it would take care of flights. It would take care of preparation on the flights. It would take care of all transportation. Let's say you pass away in Europe or Asia, that could be $20,000 just to get you back here. So what happens is this plan covers that, and you get 2 cards in the mail. It's a phone number that's on the back. I always say when you're traveling, let your companion know you have it. You can make that call, and then they set up to bring you back to the funeral home of your choosing.
That's fantastic, because we know it is so much money if that had to happen and you had to transport home.
It is, and it's always good just to have the extra protection because you never know.
Exactly. Now, you did mention, we'll end with this, the last question, Veterans Burial Benefit. Now, I understand there is a benefit. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, so there are a couple benefits. Your Veterans Burial Benefits, one, the most important that any funeral home will need is your DD-214 or your separation paperwork. That is going to basically qualify you for certain benefits. So if you qualify, honorable discharge, certain period, then you can go to a national cemetery for burial for yourself and your spouse, and there would not be a charge for the opening and closing of the grave itself. The stone, the flat marker is also taken care of, and that's the engravement is taken care of, as well as for the veteran military honors. So taps, the folding of the flags.
Wow.
So that's taken care of. And it's really for any national cemetery. And that's going to be your largest benefit. But it's important to have that DD-214. We don't need the actual original, but we do need a copy of it. And you can even get pre-qualified if you were nervous. Let's say the Rhode Island Veterans Cemetery, it's state-run, so the qualifications are slightly different. So that will take care of the qualifications for that. You can pre-qualify.
That's great, because these people have done a lot for our country and deserve to, have end-of-life some services.
And we also have affinity, Dignity Memorial affinity relationships with the VFW and American Legion. So if you are a member and you go to one of your Dignity affiliates, you can show them your card and you would get a 10% savings from the funeral arrangements.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I'd like to end the show with 3 questions.
Yes.
Okay, the first question is, tell us a fun fact about you. It can be anything.
Okay, so I actually do have my MBA.
Oh.
I didn't need it, I just kept going because a backup plan. So it couldn't hurt to have it. So I actually went to school at night, and then during the day I was a funeral director, and I went to Bryant University and have my MBA.
Wow, you are a go-getter. Now, another question. Do you have any pets? We love animals
I
on
do.
this show.
So I have a beagle named Daisy.
Oh.
So she's 7. She actually, I can't have animals at my apartment, so she stays with my parents, which I think she loves more than me now, because I take care of all of the bad things, taking her to the vet, you know, everything like that, and my parents snuggle and cuddle. I said the other day, I said, they always get the fun part of having the dog. I don't get the fun part. But yes, she's very, very cute, and I love her.
That's awesome. You get all the work.
That's what I say.
And then lastly, summer is approaching. Do you have any vacation plans?
I don't. So I'm looking to hopefully get away, even if it's a long weekend, maybe go to Cape Cod or somewhere to get away. I love going to being on the water, going to the beach. So I hopefully eventually can make something, schedule something.
Oh, excellent. Make it happen. You work really hard.
I'm trying.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for joining in with us. Until next time, have a great day.